Hi, and good evening. This is Eden Gordon Hill, and I am with Defenders Live. We thank you again for joining us. And this evening, we have Dan McMillan. As you see, he is JD, PhD, and calls for impartial commission on the January 6th commission. And Dan, we are so grateful to have you here. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, thank you, Eden. You have no idea how grateful I am to be here with you and to have this chance to put my ideas before the American people, because pretty much every message in our politics is negative.
Mhm.
And I think I've got actually a message that's positive, that's unifying, and that's optimistic, because I think we actually can fix this messed up political system we've got. And it doesn't have to be a disaster like it is right now. And I want to tell you all about it.
Oh, I'm so grateful.
Yes.
I have a feeling we're going to have another a part two of this because there's so much to dig into.
as
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 many parts as you could stand, Eden,
Oh, well,
until
great,
you're
thank
sick of
you.
seeing my ugly mug.
Well, Dan, it's great to have quite a few things in
Great.
common with you. I did live in New York City like you do now. And I also ran for state house most recently, earlier this year. And I know we had a brief discussion on empowering the voter, empowering the people, empowering the constituents. And during my campaign trail, I noticed a lot of illegal and legal money activities that was going on with the other
Yeah.
two candidates who were running for an open seat. And at the end of the day, my goal was I was going to run a shoestring budget similar to others and around the nation because I wanted to not have to, I wanted to be held accountable to the constituency. I didn't want to be spending their paycheck on my campaign, knowing at the end of the day, their voices need to be heard. But here's where I want to go with our interview today.
Sure.
And obviously, we will go from there. You were a former Democrat.
Yes.
You became an independent. And something that really stood out to me was the R's, the Republicans on January 6th, and the political theater and the waste of tax dollar monies they've been doing with all of these evening events.
Well, actually, Eden, well, I understand what you're saying, and you've
Yes.
got some valid arguments.
Yes.
But I actually had a somewhat different argument, and I,
Okay.
and I got
Let
to
me
be
hear it.
clear about
Let me
it.
hear it.
I
Let
mean,
me hear it.
particularly because this is all so explosive and
Yes, it
targeted.
is. It
And I
is.
need to be clear, in fact, I'm not only independent, which is kind of in the middle. I am nonpartisan. I take a stand on one issue and one issue only, which is
Mhm.
getting big money out of politics and bringing back government by the people. And I think this is something that Americans on both sides of the aisle can support.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I see it as a wonderful chance to kind of dial down the partisan anger, give us a chance to work together, in service of what we believe in. Now, what I talked about an independent commission
Mhm.
was not about January 6th, because what, for me, far more important than January 6th
Mhm.
is the belief, the fear by tens of millions of Americans, and it's not just Republicans, and on both sides of the aisle, that there were improprieties in the
Mhm.
2020 election. Some people think the
Yes.
election was flat out stolen.
Yes.
Others believe that there were attempts to rig it. There have been many allegations made by politicians from both parties against the opposing side. And the thing is, it's gotten to the point now, frankly, the truth of these allegations is less important to me than simply the fact, if this many of our fellow Americans do not have confidence that our elections are free and fair, it's the end of the republic.
It is.
How are we going to govern ourselves?
It
What's
is.
going to happen in 24?
Right.
The losing side is going to go ballistic.
Right.
I mean, there's going to be blood flowing in the streets.
Yes.
And I
You
mean,
are correct.
we're already getting there. Okay,
Yes.
there already is blood flowing in the streets. There already, I mean, there was a guy who tried to assassinate Kavanaugh. On the
Yes.
other side, someone tried to break into an FBI office with a gun and kill FBI agents. It's gotten out of control.
And even with
And
Mar-a-Lago, even with
and
Mar-a-Lago.
and the Mar-a-Lago has been enormously paralyzing. That the Mar-a-Lago surge has escalated. The rhetoric,
Yes.
the anger,
Yes.
and again, I take no sides on whether the search was justified or not. For one thing, as a former prosecuting attorney, I never comment on criminal cases unless it's my case and I actually have
Sure.
seen all the evidence. So,
Sure. Sure.
That's one issue where it's very easy for me to be nonpartisan and hands
Right.
off. But in any case, what I think and what really it just baffles me. I mean, if I had been Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or Kevin McCarthy on January 7th, the first thing I would have done,
Mhm.
in fact, I would have done this right after midnight, after once the voting was done to certify the election. I would have said, look, guys, this is out of control. We need to lay the public's fears to rest.
Right.
And a partisan inquiry is not going to satisfy anyone. A congressional inquiry is going to only inflame these passions. What we need is an independent commission like the 9/11 Commission, and let's staff
Right.
it with people that all Americans trust to be square with them. If Colin Powell were still alive, he'd be my first choice to chair that commission. Maybe Chief Justice Roberts. I don't know. A Catholic archbishop, the top rabbi in the country, the leading Muslim imam, whatever. People, men and women whose integrity and patriotism is unimpeachable. And the country is so divided. We don't have a huge number of people in this country that every American trusts, but there still are a few left. And I
Right.
say, found a commission, staff it with people like that, give them all the resources they need, give them full investigatory powers. I mean, they can jail someone for contempt if they won't testify under subpoena, and let them investigate every single allegation of improper behavior related to those elections on both sides of the aisle, and follow the evidence where it leads. And any allegations that were not justified, will we lay them to rest? If any allegations were justified, then people are held. Then it's referred to prosecutors. We hold people accountable, and we put mechanisms in place so that every American knows, come the next election, their vote will be counted, and no vote by anyone who wasn't eligible will be counted,
Mhm.
and there will be no tampering, no pressure, no monkey business. Right
Right.
now, Americans do not have that confidence.
That
Frankly,
is
I don't
exactly
have
right.
that confidence.
Neither do
Okay,
I. Neither
I
do
don't
I.
have that confidence either.
Right.
And it's not about believing in conspiracies. The fact is,
Right.
we have become so partisan, so divided that really in both parties there is now kind of an attitude of win at any price, fair or foul.
Well, let's talk about that for a
Sure.
second. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that because you talk about the big donors and
Yes.
you talk about candidates who cater to the big donors. And
Yes.
you talk about the fact that the middleman, the constituent, the real constituents that really get them in, do they actually get them in? Or is it the big donor dollars that come from all over, that come from Soros? I'm going to bring up Soros. It comes from
No, you
Zuckerberg,
can.
you know?
You can bring up Soros, and the Democrats will bring up Charles Koch, and you both have a
Yep.
point. You
Right.
know,
So let's
I don't like billionaires of any stripe.
right.
Because instead of one person, one American, one vote, as our founding fathers intended, what we've got is one billionaire with the equivalent of 5 million votes or more.
So what
And
do
that,
we do about that? So what do we do about that? For
well,
so we have November 2022 coming up. What do we do about that?
in time for that election, we probably won't get anything done. But one thing, I'd love to see it become an issue in the midterms,
Mhm.
and maybe with your help, we can get it on the agenda. Because look, it's called democracy dollars. Okay,
Mhm.
and as I say, I've spent the last the dozen years studying the problem of money in politics, and all the different ideas that people have come up with for
Mhm.
fixing the problem. The best one by far I've come across is usually now referred to as democracy dollars. Andrew Yang actually talks about it a bit, though I'm not endorsing Andrew Yang, needless to say, because I'm nonpartisan. Kirsten Gillibrand actually mentioned it
Uh-huh.
in her primary campaign. It was invented by a couple of very bright guys at Yale Law School, Bruce Ackerman and Ian Ayres. I know Bruce actually. I've spoken to him. He's a very nice guy,
Mhm.
totally unpretentious, down to earth, which you
Right.
don't always find among people who are brilliant enough to teach at Yale. So
Right.
it's really endearing, actually. He's really a nice guy. And in any case, getting back to the point,
Sure.
the concept is breathtaking in its simplicity, and it's so
Mm.
common sense. Problem: the only people in our politics who've got any juice in Washington are high dollar campaign donors.
Right.
Solution: make ourselves the donors. Let the
Mhm.
voters be the donors who really count. This is what's called democracy dollars. And the concept is, for every federal election, the federal government would give every registered voter, and we have about 200 million of us right now, an online account of campaign cash, of democracy dollars. And we think this needs to be robustly funded, $100 per voter in a presidential year, $50 per voter in the midterms, which are cheaper because there's no presidential race.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take the money out and spend it, but you go online with a pin and you assign it to the party and the candidates you want to support. So in a presidential year, maybe $10 to your party, $20 to the House race, your district. If there's a Senate race in your state, more money for that, and then a chunk for the presidential race, and probably divide it up into pockets for, primary and general.
Okay.
And if you fund it at this robust level, there'll be more than enough money in the system for any competent candidate,
Mm-hmm.
any candidate with something to say to offer the voters, to
Right.
raise more than enough money from the voters to run a hyper expensive, fully competitive campaign. Because campaigns are ridiculously expensive.
Yes,
And
they are. Yes, they are.
Supreme Court will not let us change that because the court thinks that regulating the cost of campaigns violates people's free speech rights. So
Let's
that
talk about that. Let's talk about that. Go a little
sure
bit
we
deeper on
can. But let me just yeah, I guess I've explained the democracy dollars concept is clear, right? But
Yes.
basically what I love about it is not just its simplicity, but it's just so common sense. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune. Right now, the donors pay the piper. You didn't, and they call the tune. You didn't want those donors to call your tune, so you
Right.
didn't take their money.
Right.
You wanted to call the voters' tune, but the reality is, we the people don't get to call the tune unless we start paying the piper.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the other thing is that this system would be impossible for the government to mess up. It would be impossible for any kind of manipulator to
Mm-hmm.
rig. Because, I mean, if it were a centralized system where the government was dispersing cash from
Mm-hmm.
Washington,
Right.
yeah, then the members of Congress who wrote the law could rig it
Mm-hmm.
to preserve their incumbency. But this way, all the government does is build, at the beginning, a huge national website where everyone gets their Democracy Dollars account and
Mm-hmm.
link these accounts via wire transfer to the
Sure.
checking accounts of all the political campaigns. And you open up your Democracy Dollars account, and there is a list of all the candidates and all the races in which you
Sure.
can vote,
Sure.
links to their websites. You can inform yourself, make your decision. The government sets up the website, turns over this money to each of us, and then the voters take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no way. I mean, it's foolproof, and
So
it's so simple. You could establish this system in a law that probably wouldn't run for more than 30 pages.
right, right. So I sit there and say, I just came back last week from an election integrity event here
Okay.
in Carteret County. The gentleman's name is Seth Keschel. He was the keynote speaker. He's been traveling across the country. He highlights presidential elections from the time of Bush, 43 to current with Trump and everything that's going on in that regard. So my question to you is, with the democracy dollars and the election integrity, where are we? The question goes back. We want to empower the voter. We want to make sure that their voices are heard and the power back to the people.
Yeah.
But will democracy dollars work in the event that, we are still trying to figure out, well, I think the election was stolen in 2020. So the bigger question is, are we going to be able to trust democracy dollars when there are still election integrity issues that are still at hand that still haven't been resolved, if you will? And will they ever be resolved?
Well, unless and until, the leadership of both parties in DC get their act together, do the right thing, and establish the kind of commission we're talking about, I don't see how we resolve the concerns about the 2020 election. That said, establishing a democracy style system could only help restore people's faith in the government, because it will put the voters back in the driver's seat. And also because politicians will stop lying to us, because politicians who lie to us are going to lose elections to
Mhm.
politicians who fund their campaigns with democracy dollars and actually have some real solutions to offer us to our problems.
Mhm.
What my theory And I
Mhm.
think I think it holds water about why. I mean, look, the partisanship, the anger between Republicans and Democrats, it's been building for a long time. I
Right.
dated all the way to the 1980s. I can remember the beginnings, but it's escalated dramatically in the last dozen years, and it really kind of got off the charts in the last 3 or 4. What's driving this escalation of the anger? So many commentators, people in the media, they blame the voters, which is
Yes.
crazy because
Yes,
the
they do.
voters, we're all powerless in the political system. So how could we be causing anything that's happening in our politics? We
Right.
don't determine the behavior of politicians. The politicians, on the other hand, are pouring hateful mind poison into our ears.
Mhm.
Why are they doing this? Well, I think they're doing this because the cost of elections has skyrocketed since the Citizens United decision in 2010.
Mhm.
Alone between 2016 and 2020, the cost of the in 2020, individuals, pressure groups, corporations, labor unions spent $14.4 billion to influence the outcome of those elections, to help candidates they like, to hurt candidates they don't like. This is more than double
Mhm.
the total in 2016.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
and what result of this? Basically, we're in a situation now where all politicians of both parties are hogtied by all the favors they owe to all the donors.
Exactly.
And even more important, this is something that it's actually much bigger. It's a lot bigger than the influence peddling we see. It's kind of the invisible mass of the iceberg.
Mhm.
Is all the good ideas and good potential candidates that you never hear about because they would not attract funding.
Mhm.
Because you can't get a campaign off the ground until you attract a large amount of funding. If you
Right.
don't attract enough money, the
Right.
media decides you're not viable. The
Right.
public never hears your name.
Right.
So it's kind of our Darwinian process
Yes.
where good ideas and good candidates and good questions die off out of
Mhm.
sight and out of mind
Mhm.
because they're not going to attract the bucks. In
Mhm.
any case, circling back to what I was saying about polarization,
Mhm.
the money has effectively is it has broken the system so badly. Neither party can offer us solutions to our problems, and we got a lot of problems, a lot of
Mhm.
challenges in this
Yes.
country,
Yes, we
and
do.
we've been kicking the can down the road
Yes.
on our problems for decades, and they just been these unsolved problems have been piling up. Infrastructure, underperforming schools,
Yes.
increasingly broken healthcare system,
Yes.
falling quality of life.
The list goes on.
It
Yes.
goes on and on and on.
Yes.
It's like a mountain of despair.
Mhm.
And it's nothing bigger than what we've handled in the past. I mean, if we got through we came out of the Great Depression and World War II stronger than we'd ever been. We came out a
Right.
colossus.
Right.
And we can do that again, absolutely. But the difference is back then, the American people were in the driver's seat. We had
Yes.
governed by the people. We've got
Yes.
to bring it back. Anyway, what is happening, I'm rambling a bit and jumping
No,
around, but
you're good. You're good.
okay, good. But what I'm focusing on about the polarization is since they have nothing positive to offer anymore, they can say since they're so hemmed in by their donors and the needs to raise money that they can't even fart without permission. Pardon my vulgarity. Since they have nothing positive to offer, both parties have defaulted to negative messaging. The
Yes.
only thing both parties have left to keep their own voters in line is to foster fear and hostility
Right.
toward the other party. And what is particularly offensive to me, it's not just encouraging us to dislike the politicians of the other party, they
Mhm.
encourage us to dislike the voters of the other party,
Right.
which
Right.
is sick.
Right.
And I guess even though one of the reasons, well, one thing that made it easier for me to kind of give up being a Democrat and become truly nonpartisan,
Yes.
I guess I can thank Hillary for this, was her basket of deplorables remarks about Donald
Oh,
Trump supporters. To me, those are some of the most disgusting words ever said in American politics. I mean,
yes.
if you
Agreed.
believe in government by the people, you don't blame the voters. If the voters don't support you, you don't point the finger of blame at them. You look in the mirror and ask
Exactly.
yourself, and she basically wrote off half the country.
She did. She did.
She did. And unfortunately, she's not the only politician who doesn't respect us. I think that's true of all of them. She's just the only one who was politically clumsy and stupid enough to say it out loud when a tape was running.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have seen some very unprofessional, unethical clumsiness of here in North Carolina of those who are running for federal and state offices.
Really?
And when they're caught and they say I can't wait. This person says, I can't wait to win this election so I can tell everybody what to do and I can boss everybody around. And they're
Really?
yes, and they
Say
are
stuff like that.
yes,
Wow.
yes. And another one is running for Senate. And as I was, talking with this sitting congressman who is running for Senate, I ran heavily on veteran issues because the area that we live in here is 9,000 veterans that are populated here, retirees, and you
Mhm.
have Camp Lejeune and Fort Bragg and Cherry Point Air Station all in this area. My husband is a veteran. He is United States Army and National Guard. And I was uncovering a lot of issues within the VA and a lot of issues with healthcare for our veterans
Mm,
across the board. And I approached that congressman who's running for Senate and I said, so can you help me understand X, Y, and Z? Why did the VA close and why didn't they notify our veterans? Why is my husband being denied care when he's 100% disabled on paper and they told us to go to a local urgent care? I said, there are many issues that our veterans are facing, and my husband is just one of many. And you know what he said to me?
what?
He said, go talk to the sitting congressman for your area.
Oh, that's so sick.
It's pathetic. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
He's running for our next senator from this area. And I would love to have him on the show and really would like to debate with him, but he has got to remember as he's going around kowtowing to his big donors, he is forgetting about the fact that his state is filled with veterans.
Yeah.
And his state also has some of the highest revenue with our military personnel and military
Yeah.
bases. And at the end of the day, that is what I am concerned about. So if
Yeah.
I decided to run again for another position, whether it's from this state or another state, what would I say to Democracy Dollars? How could I implement this opportunity for myself and my campaign? Because it's my constituents, 125 miles. I still call my constituents.
Yeah.
I knocked on their doors.
Yeah.
I interfaced with them. I heard their stories, their concerns of big pharma, their concerns of mandates, their concerns of CRT, their concerns if they're going to get their next paycheck. But the other candidates running for that seat did not do that. They did not sit down and talk with
Yeah.
people. They were too good and they wanted to boss people around. So, my question to you is what can I do with Democracy Dollars or any other person out there who really cares about this nation to revive patriotism, to not have
Yeah.
another Hillary? What can we do?
Well, Eden, I think the most valuable thing, well, I would like everyone, first of all, everyone who's listening, if they like what you and I are saying, and you and I think
Mhm.
are saying a lot of the same things,
We are. We
we're on
are.
the same page, and I like it. Great minds think alike, as they say.
Yes, they
And,
do.
I would encourage anyone watching this show, if you agree with me and Eden about getting big money out of politics, tell your friends about what you've heard. Send them the link to the show. Please go to our website,
Mhm.
savedemocracyinamerica.org. We've got audio of a few of my interviews on radio. We've got a couple of videos we put together. There's an FAQs page. There's a whole page on how you can help. But if you can make a donation,
Mhm.
absolutely, that's great. And even
Mhm.
just $5 is great because there's a huge difference between $5 and no donation. Because if you actually put your money where your mouth is, that's a sign of support that we can announce to the media. And now we have 100,000 individual donors. Now we have a 500,000.
Mhm.
But really, my feeling is that we've got a message that Americans can embrace on
Yes.
both sides. We all
Yes.
believe. Look, we're all patriots in this country. We all believe
Yes.
in individual freedom, equality of opportunity, and government of, by, and for the people.
Yes.
After all, it was we Americans who invented government by the people. And, we Americans, we didn't just invent it. Hundreds of thousands of us across the generations have given our lives in wars fought for freedom, and not just for our freedom, for all of humankind. I
Yes.
mean, this is what makes our country, our people, for me, by my personal values, this is subjective judgment, without question, the finest people on earth, the greatest nation on earth, the
Yes.
greatest country on earth, the
Yes.
greatest force for good in history.
Yes.
And but people work in politics. No one talks about America this way anymore, the way you and I talk about America,
Right.
feel about
Right.
America. But the American people haven't forgotten.
No, they haven't.
And the
No, they
thing
haven't.
is, if you just share our website on social media or with a friend, or even better, talk to a friend, or a relative, maybe someone from the other party that you haven't been speaking with recently because you're mad about politics.
Yeah.
Because no message, political message, is as remotely as powerful as one that comes from someone you trust.
Hmm.
If you say, "Look, Bob, I saw this interview with Eden, and I went to this website. I think these people are onto something. I think
Yes.
this Democracy Dollars is the ticket." Believe me, you have an impact.
Hmm.
The thing is, the way I see it, it's just a question of getting our message out. I am I mean, in my own personal conversations with people, and I live here in New York, and I
Yes.
talk with people from all walks of life,
Yes.
all educational levels, rich and poor, black and white, English and Spanish. And I tell you, I've yet to meet anyone who doesn't say to me, "Oh, God, I hope you win." That is such a great idea. And it's not
Hmm.
a scientific poll, but I think that ultimately, once we get this idea out, once we get the word out, this could snowball very quickly
Hmm.
because it's
Hmm.
an idea whose time has come. Because every American knows the political system is busted.
Yes,
We're
it is.
all fed up with politicians who don't listen to us, who don't care what we think, who don't care what we need, who don't respect us.
Hmm.
Because the reality is, coming back to something you said earlier about constituency, and we're not their constituents anymore. Their
Hmm.
constituents for decades have been the donors who pay for their hyper expensive election campaigns.
Right.
But let me also emphasize, because our campaign is entirely positive, because I need to say that the donors who give the money and the politicians who take it, most of them are not really bad people. They're doing what they have to do.
Right.
They're playing by the rules of the system as it exists.
And it's a broken system.
It's a broken. The problem. Our fellow Americans are not our enemy. The money, and
Yeah.
only the money is our enemy. And because it's the enemy of us all, we can band together and defeat it. And then we can put our heads together, roll up our sleeves, and get this country moving again.
Yes, we have just a little under 2 minutes left. I would
Good.
love to switch topics just briefly with you.
Sure.
Let's talk about your books. Let's talk about the book that you wrote on the Holocaust, and let's talk about the books that you're working on.
Okay. So my book is titled "How Could This Happen?" Explaining the Holocaust. It's for the general public. Written kind of at the college freshman level, very accessible, very short. You can get through it in 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
It's the only book out there that really pulls together an overview
Hmm.
of all the many different pieces of the puzzle, causes of
Hmm.
the Holocaust, because it's a complex story. So I put a lot of effort, all my effort, really into making it simple, short, and I think I've succeeded in that. And it's a fascinating story. I guess the most important takeaway I want everyone to have is people look at the Holocaust and they're frightened and they think it's a reason to feel negative about humanity, about themselves, about our future. What I say, the big conclusion of my book is that it took a perfect storm,
Hmm.
an impossible combination of like a dozen different factors that came together in a way that I don't think could ever be repeated in an advanced society like ours to make this possible.
Hmm.
And so, yes, it's a warning of what we're capable of. It's a warning that we are capable of completely negating the value of individual human life. That's what's so
Hmm.
scary about it. But it's not our destiny, it's not our future.
Hmm.
It's not a good reason for pessimism about progress in the future of our civilization.
Mm. Mm.
That's the most important thing I want everyone to know about the Holocaust. I also want them to go out and read my book.
And can you give us a sneak peek into the book that you are currently writing?
So, what it is it's like I said, I've played with different titles. You could call it "Get Money Out of Politics." The time is now. Basically, it's mostly about what big money has done to our political system and all the different ways. The
Hmm.
thing is that everyone in American politics and who comments on American politics knows that money's a problem. They don't understand that it really is the problem above all others.
Hmm.
That almost every other problem we've got can be traced, at least in part, to the money issue. The
Right.
problem is the reason no one sees this is what I said earlier. The
Yeah.
biggest part of the damage the money does is invisible because it's all the questions that don't get asked, all the ideas that are never discussed, all the good people who never run because they couldn't attract money.
Right.
And this you could think of it as kind of an invisible hole in the conversation that began to develop in the last half of the 1970s,
Mhm.
which is really when big money began to take over our politics again.
Mhm.
And then over time, as the parties fought an arms race in spending and fundraising across the decades, that invisible hole grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. No one knows it's there, but now it has crowded out so much space, there's hardly any room left around the margins for any ideas or any good people or anything we can talk about. And that's where we are now. And now our political system has entered really a condition of catastrophic failure.
Right. Right.
And we gotta get on the stick here
Yes,
and
we do.
find a way to move forward. And look, democracy dollars is not a magic wand. It's not going to make our lives wonderful in every respect, but it's a mighty first step in the
Mhm.
right direction. And it's also the essential first step because if we don't gain leverage on the money problem, we will be spinning our wheels on every single other problem we need to address in this country. Everything we want to do to make this a better country, we
Right.
ain't getting nowhere on any of them. As long as for everything we want to try, there's a group of donors who can block it.
Right. That's exactly
That's
it.
the problem. Yeah.
On that note, Dan McMillan calls for impartial commission who is Save Democracy and America.org. We are so grateful that you joined Defenders Live, and we look forward to having you back. I'm Eden Gordon Hill, and we hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Eden.